All right, so birthright citizenship. We actually went through and looked this up. We're not the only country that does it, but there aren't many. But there are some where birthright citizenship is a thing. I don't know what the details of the rules are in some of the places like Australia and elsewhere, but I can tell you this. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution was never intended to allow people to come here and have children, and those children automatically become citizens, whether they were here breaking the law or not, because that's what's happened. Illegal aliens come here, they break the law, come into the country, have a child, and then they leave, and their child's still an American citizen, which is pretty remarkable. Josh Phillips is an award-winning journalist, Senior Investigative Reporter at the Epoch Times. Josh, welcome back to the program. It's been a while.
Hey, Steve, always a pleasure.
Nice to see you, my friend. Look, give me your interpretation of the 14th Amendment.
Well, my interpretation is it was actually created for slaves to make sure they did not lose their citizenship because, there was unfortunately a push after the Civil War. The context of it was this: children of freed slaves and former slaves, that they should be American citizens. They're born here. That was that. Shortly after that, there was another court case. This was 1898. And this case is what established what is now the birthright citizenship used by, illegal aliens and children of non-citizens. This had to do with an individual whose parents were from China. They were deemed to be citizens of the Emperor of China. And this individual was born in the U.S., left, came back, was denied entry, took it to court. And it was determined, you know what, he was born in the United States, he's an American citizen, but this is the deeper context of that. That individual, it turns out his parents were permanent residents of the United States. They were not illegal immigrants. And so this interpretation of the Constitution used for U.S. permanent residents has now been extended to be for illegal aliens, people here on student visas, anybody, exactly.
Yeah,
and I think actually when they challenge this, I don't know if it's going to stand up.
Yeah, hasn't it always been the case, for example, that ambassadors here from other countries, their kids, if they're born here, are not American citizens? That's always been understood, right? So there's an exception to this Democrat idea right there. If you're not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And so the 14th Amendment was there to defend and protect newly freed slaves and their children. But it was never intended this way. And you're right, permanent residents that are here legally, that's a whole different thing than these Chinese birth houses where the Chinese women come over here at 7, 8 months pregnant, have children in America, pick them up and go back to China, and then send those kids back here in 20 years as American citizens when they've been trained by the CCP. That's the difference, isn't it?
Totally. It's also the difference when you have the human traffickers bringing over injections with them or medicines with them to induce birth, to induce labor in pregnant women. And so, you have people who are knowingly, very actively, and aggressively taking advantage of this. It's the same thing if you have a woman who's in Mexico and she, is just about to give birth. What does she do? She illegally crosses to the United States or just comes for a day, because you don't have to illegally cross if you're coming for a day. Steps over the border, goes to a hospital, goes to the emergency room, gives birth, does not have to pay anything because of the way the emergency room system works. And then, of course, there's nothing holding her to account. The kid is now an American citizen. She got free hospital care. Then she goes back to Mexico. The open doors we've created and the number of ways this can be manipulated are just insane.
It's completely insane, and it's not the way it was intended. We know that. But they didn't write it very well to deal with, they didn't consider being prepared for 21st century leftist lawyers. There's the problem, I think, Josh. 21st century.
I don't think anyone saw this coming. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of us have problems with that. You think, however, that they could say if you're here permanently or legally or even a green card holder, maybe it applies. But if you're here flat out illegal, it doesn't apply. You think the Supreme Court can, if you, sorry to say this, but split the baby, right?
Well, I think that's going to be the next big challenge, and that's the context of the recent Supreme Court ruling, where they determined that there cannot be nationwide injunctions. They can only be within the state. One of the contexts of that was Donald Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship, and what Trump did, he ended birthright citizenship through executive order for any kids now born. So if you're now born in the U.S. and your parents are not American citizens, you might not be an American citizen.
Yeah.
So what he did was this. That applies to not just illegal immigrants. That applies also to people here on work visas, green cards. Well, not green cards. Work visas, people who are here as students, visas, those types of things. Now, my personal belief, I think this will probably be challenged immediately. I think as soon as you have a case on it, the problem with the nationwide injunction that had this on hold previously, it prevented them from even looking into how to implement it, let alone the actual implementation. So this was never really brought about. It was never able to be challenged. There was never a victim to it. It was just on hold. And so now that the hold is over, we'll see if Trump actually enforces it. I do believe when it goes to the Supreme Court, I think you'll probably have a partial ruling on it. I do think, based on my understanding of the Constitution, they will probably not allow it to be applied to illegal aliens. They might make an exception for people here on like certain types of legal residency, like even possibly visas, but we'll see.
Yeah. Let me ask you something else. While we're on the Supreme Court, I want to shift gears for a moment with you, Josh. I know you watch this closely, and you have for years. It seems to me Ketanji Brown Jackson has been exposed by every other member of the court as being completely incompetent. I mean, I'm going to read something from Amy Coney Barrett that I'm sure you read and had the same kind of reaction that everybody else did. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. Basically, what Amy Coney Barrett wrote here, so 2 things. Amy Coney Barrett has redeemed herself in some ways in my mind. That's thing one. Thing two, she basically says to Ketanji Brown Jackson, this is so stupid, I'm not even going to respond to it. That's what it's. This is so stupid, we're not even going to talk about it. Did I miss something?
Well, there's 2 different types of interpretation of the Constitution. I think the more traditional way of reading the Constitution is you have to look at things in the context of the thinking of how they were created. And so the intent of the creation of an amendment should be taken into consideration in how you implement it. The problem we've had over the course of time is that some amendments have been enforced in ways that they were not originally intended.
Well, that's all
And
true, but
that,
the point that I'm
and then
making
you
is
get people.
they think she's stupid.
Seems to be a lot of personal arguments they have there. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
It's
I've never seen
interesting
anything
to
like it.
watch.
You've read Supreme Court decisions, as have I. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, they just said you're too dumb to respond to. Anyhow, I wish we had more time for that one, but I appreciate it. Say again.
I said new politics. People are done. They just call each other out now.
Yeah. Well, 6 people signed their names to that. That's the thing. Josh Philipp, always appreciate you being here. Thank you, Josh.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
From the Epoch Times, you can read him there. I'll be right back.